Happy 4th of July, everybody. This is probably the perfect time, or maybe the worst time to say this, but it definitely is time that we said it. Given all the evidence, it is pretty clear now that the GOP is actually a death cult. And if you don't believe that, or you think that's ridiculous to say, then let's just go through and see. I'm Kevin Lankus, my friends call me Doodles, and we're about to lie down in the pit while they pour the dirt over the body of American democracy. You have two kinds of death cultists in the GOP, and I'm not talking about the regular people or the followers in the cult. I'm talking about the people who run things, and there's two of them. You have the pathological, wealth-hoarding murder psychos, and you have the ancient, prophecy-fulfilling evangelical murder psychos. The first group is made of people who simply cannot get enough money. They just can't. In the future, if we get through this particular moment in history, this is going to be classified as a mental illness and studied and treated. But we might not make it to that point because the people who are suffering from this genuine pathology are currently writing the rules for the rest of us. At every turn, they are cutting salaries, they're cutting benefits, and they're removing rights from the regular working people and the working poor of America. We're talking about 90% of people being run ragged and continually threatened life and limb by the other 10%. They just take and they lobby the government through interest groups so they can take more because these interest groups are sprouting up to specifically capitalize on their illness and take money in exchange for influence peddling with political leadership. Super PACs that circumvent political donation laws are just a regular thing now that we've all accepted, and they allow infinite money to pour into the political process. And this makes it more likely that these same mentally ill hoarders will enter into the political races and get elected themselves. And so now we have, on both sides of the political engine, people who simply must do whatever they can to enrich themselves, and this is their only guiding principle. And in the meantime, real people are suffering and they're dying, and the planet is becoming progressively uninhabitable for all of us, and governance and lawmaking are just distant memories. There's only one logical endgame scenario for this first group, and that is overconsumption of resources to the point where there are no longer any resources. Everyone outside the absolute richest Americans will die because we can't afford food. And then finally, these idiots are going to die off too because there's no one left to make them any food. It's super dumb, it's pathological, and they need to be forced to understand that they have enough and they aren't getting any more. The second group are the religious fanatics. And I have to say this before I get into this so that everybody doesn't yell at me, but religion is not inherently wrong or harmful. Having a spiritual relationship with your chosen god or spellcasting focus can be life-changing. The issue is all about what people do with it and how they wield it that causes the problems. Because for generations, certain people have taken their religions on vast crusades of murder and devastation and used the excuse that their particular deadbeat sky daddy was the only divine authority that counts. And that's what we're seeing right now in the second major faction in the GOP death cult. A lot of them are evangelicals and other fundamentalists who have extremely radical beliefs about Christianity that you're just never gonna convince them otherwise. They believe that there will be a war for all of our souls in the end times and that it's going to happen in Israel. This is also the reason we have such staunch US foreign policy supports for the country of Israel, because it's based on these ideological beliefs in the Christian apocalypse. If Israel isn't there anymore, then how is the Antichrist going to attack God's chosen people in Jerusalem to kick off that final battle? It says there right in the book that this is what is supposed to happen. And I sort of lost my mind when I wrapped my head around this because we're always arguing about foreign policy in the Middle East and whether or not a support for Israel is a good idea for one reason or another. But this specific place has to be there for the end times to happen and for certain people to get their heavenly reward for all of eternity. It's kind of a big stakes thing for them. I also have to address the overlap with these two groups. And the groups overlap with Israel because historically, neolibs and neocons used this one ally in the Middle East to stage military operations into other countries in an oil-rich region. And they made lots of money doing it, but not a lot of friends. So we have to hang on to this one friend we have there even harder, and it's a vicious cycle and it just keeps making everything worse. The idea that the GOP is a death cult did not originate with me. It's not my original opinion. Tons of people have been pointing this out for several years now on social media and major op-eds and everywhere. There's lots of really big reasons for that, and the first time that I remember this coming up in a major way was during the debate around Obamacare. At that point, Republicans were refusing to work collaboratively to lower healthcare costs and give more people insurance and medical care. They just completely stonewalled every single effort to give healthcare to people who needed it, and they wanted to keep denying protections for pre-existing conditions, and they definitely did not want to lower out-of-pocket costs for families. And in the public narrative, they came out with this phrase, the death panels, and they said that, you were going to have a group of people, I guess, appointed by Obama who gets to decide who gets healthcare and who doesn't. Which is just so completely absurd on its face, because that's exactly what was happening at that point, and that they didn't want to change. Just with private insurance panels who refused to cover treatment for no other reason than that they just didn't want to pay out. And GOP legislators were making a lot of money from health insurance lobbyists, and they still are. The latest nonsense thing is this big, beautiful bill, as it's awkwardly and unfortunately called, like a toddler with a crayon named it. And I guess a toddler with the crayon did name it. It's probably going to pass in one form or another, and it might even have passed while I was filming this, and it's going to kill people. It's going to close hospitals, it's going to kick old people in nursing homes off of Medicaid, which means that they get kicked out of their nursing homes and they don't get care. And it cuts food stamps for the working poor of America. In an era where most people don't even pay attention to the news at all, the horrific things this bill is going to do have gotten through to people. And the polling is in the toilet for this thing, both by the public and from Congress, who continue to vote this thing through. It's so far past time that we stop messing around and just labeled these people for what they are. This is one of the biggest problems with left-wing politics in America. The first being that the American left isn't actually even on the left, but that's a different story. One of the biggest problems in America is this pervasive idea that tolerance has to extend to people, ideas, and factions that are intolerant. And that's just garbage. The very idea of tolerance comes with the promise of enforcement attached to it. This is why the world sent 156,000 people to a nice little tropical beach vacation at a place you might have heard of called the Invasion of Normandy. There is no place within the realm of tolerance for intolerance. But the argument for the members of the GOP death cult is that they want to get rid of people, and by whatever means they can get you to stomach. It's actually hard to imagine what they'd be okay with if nobody's looking, because right now, while people are looking, they're kidnapping US citizens and shipping them off to inhumane fortress prisons in countries they've never been to. And they say that the backlash that they get for this is wrong because you're supposed to tolerate people and their opinions. And this is just so completely insane that I don't even know why anyone engaged with this at all, but lots of us did, and we tried to present rational arguments, but you can't argue rationally with people who don't think that you or your friends are human beings. And so it's time to stop wasting energy in the wrong places and start putting it fully into the things that might have a chance to fix any of this. And one of the ways that we can do that is by making politics a public service again. We desperately have to get the money out. It's supposed to be a hardship. You're not supposed to want to do it. Jefferson would complain about having to travel to DC in a horse-drawn carriage and put the time in away from his private life and endeavors because it was a major sacrifice. And that's how it's supposed to be. It was designed that way. You should not ever come out of politics wealthier than when you started. This specifically is a failure of the American political system. We have a president right now who's selling Trump-branded perfume from the Oval Office that he just came out with yesterday, for fuck's sake. He's hawking all kinds of useless made-in-China bullshit to the death cult followers right now as if this is in any way normal or okay. Another thing is that we have to put the government back in the hands of the experts, whether that means specifically electing them or electing the people who promise to listen to them. Because governing is about humility as well as sacrifice. It's about knowing what you don't know and deploying the best solutions from the best information. It is absolutely not about bullshitting your way through things and refusing to ever change your mind when presented with mountains of evidence that say that you're wrong, because that's what we're dealing with now. It's also time to get personal spiritual beliefs out of the equation. Believe and practice whatever you want in your own home, but keep creationism and the 10 Commandments out of our schools and courthouses. Right now, we are allowing our children's knowledge of the world to be handicapped for moral victories. The future generations of America are going to be eaten alive in the global economy moving forward. They simply will not be prepared, and they will not have the knowledge or skills necessary to compete. Lastly, we desperately need better regulatory accountability for misinformation and for lies. Right now, we have a con man in the Oval Office who spends all of his time golfing and lying to you about his weight and his crowd sizes, and he's going on camera 24/7 because he can't get enough of himself, and he's just telling you completely insane and untrue things with every breath he takes, and that is even, when you can understand what it is he's even attempting to say, which is honestly not super often. And all of the people who are invested in the success of the death cult are propping him up and desperately trying to convince you that any of this is okay. And now it's not even news that he can't even spell his own name, and yeah, that happened, and he can't pronounce words, which happens constantly, and he thinks that the Declaration of Independence was from the Civil War, which he just said. And he thinks that he invented words and phrases all the time, like prime the pump and groceries, and these things have been around for hundreds of years. The guy is completely fried in the brain, and we have to deal with the circumstances that brought us to him. And I have to hope that we can before we celebrate another 4th of July and we find ourselves in even more dire straits. Say hi to your family for me over the holiday, and please be careful, and please don't lose any pieces of yourself or burn anything down. And if you can, let's do some good wherever we personally can in the world while we're off celebrating. I'll see you after the weekend.